everyone to another talk time. We've got Teresa Saunders with me. Hi, Teresa.
Hi Meredith, how are you this week?
I'm good. We're in for a nice topic, I think, and a lot of hypnotherapists do sort of work on post-hypnotic suggestions, but I'd like to drill down a little bit more into how important they are, actually. We're going to be talking about that today, and if anyone has a question, please, flick us a line and we'd love to talk more about those things. If you have something that you're unsure about, you want to know more about, we can take this opportunity to talk about it. So talk time, we do it once a week and we talk about all sorts of things to do with hypnosis. So definitely, I think post-hypnotic suggestion is a biggie in our field. So what do you think about the importance of having some really good post-hypnotic suggestions for the client? Why do you think that's important for the client to take away?
Because that can completely change the results of your actual session, having that post-hypnotic suggestion. I was just wondering, before we went deeper into that, Meredith, if you actually would like to explain to people what a post-hypnotic suggestion is for those that may not be familiar with that term.
It is a suggestion that's going to be acted upon later when it's time. So, for example, if someone was finding it hard to go to sleep at night, the post-hypnotic suggestion might sound like, every time you put your head upon your pillow at night with the intention of sleeping, sleep comes to you easily. As soon as you close your eyes, you begin to drift deeper and deeper into a natural sound sleep, waking only in the morning when it's time. So what I'm doing there, I'm priming expectation before the client has the actual experience and getting the client's mind to dress rehearse what that's going to be. And we're creating what we call an anchor, a trigger that is the pillow, and also the trigger of the intention of going to sleep with the pillow together, and also closing the eyes. So there are a number of layered suggestions within that particular example that we are working with that is a post-hypnotic suggestion.
And how does that post-hypnotic suggestion differ into the broader practice of hypnosis?
Well, I think we are doing a lot of those naturally, but we're being quite specific about the anchors or triggers that we want a person to play a particular program. Now, sometimes it could be letting go. So we might be doing some healing work where we're letting go of something that has affected a person. Now, with the future pacing, when you're getting a person to reinforce how they would like to be from here on, this is where we can utilize the idea of post-hypnotic suggestion.
And would it matter what type of language I use when I'm actually giving that post-hypnotic suggestion to people? Sort of what tense, whether it's a future tense, past tense, the now tense?
So you are saying every time you, from now on you. So you're actually bringing it into from now on. So it is a direct suggestion. It's very, very pointed towards from now on. It's not you might find that you. So we're using very direct suggestion, and we're using the now, from now on you. Every time you do that, you find you feel this, this, and this, and you're able to do this, this, and this now. So every time your alarm clock, so every time your alarm clock goes off in the morning, you feel a wonderful, tremendous optimism. This optimistic feeling gets you out of bed easily as you get yourself ready to go to the gym. So that might be really good for someone who finds it really hard to get out of bed in the morning and get to the gym.
Yeah, so you're carrying on that suggestion, so that what you've already implanted as such, or implanted is not the right, but already that you've gone through that process in your suggestion, you're continuing that on, so that in the morning, the next morning, they're going to carry on with that hypnotic suggestion.
Yeah. So we're using universal quantifying statements like every time now you get up in the morning, you feel amazing, rather than sometimes when you get up in the morning, you'll feel amazing. So we often want to over exaggerate that kind of suggestion. So it really is quite big and bold and not negotiable. It's like, yes, this is how it is now.
It's also amazing the power of word, isn't it? That the actual word power has, depended on what you put before it and after it, to how that makes somebody feel.
Yeah. When we're looking at client directive, we need to be, first of all, working out what the client wants to experience. So we need to key into that core emotion that they want to experience moving forward, rather than accidentally reinforcing the you won't need to feel anxious anymore. What we really want to key into is every time you are in that social environment, you feel really relaxed and so happy to be there and ready to find the treasure in the room. And you're able to get up and say hi to all sorts of different new people and feel that wonderful natural high of connection.
So is this one of the places where it's important to listen to what your client actually says to you and how you put that into your session?
For sure. So for that example, the client may have said to me, I really want to feel better when I'm in a social situation. I want to feel that I can go up to anyone and feel more confident and relaxed. So of course you're going to go, okay, we're going to reiterate those key emotional words, and we're going to utilize that in the post-hypnotic suggestion.
And would there be any key principles that you'd emphasize when teaching students about the post-hypnotic suggestion?
I think they need to be achievable for a start. So you don't want to be setting someone up for instant stress because it didn't happen, and it couldn't happen maybe in that time frame. Actually, it reminds me of a time when my daughter, she wanted to get really good at public speaking. She was about 7 years old. Something about that was quite funny, because she said, oh, can you hypnotize me? I want to get really good at public speaking. And I said, sure. So I did a little session and she listened to it. And when she had the speech the next day, I said, how did it go? And she said, I'm angry. And I said, why? And she said, well, I wasn't really that good. And I said, but were you nervous? No, I wasn't nervous. And I said, okay, so it wasn't about being nervous. No, I was really nervous before. I'm not nervous anymore. I was okay, but I wasn't very good. So in her mind, she was expecting the hypnosis to make her good at public speaking. Of course, practicing public speaking is going to make you better and better, but you don't automatically become an expert straight away. So I think that would be the first thing, is making sure that the client has a realistic expectation in mind that can actually be something that they can channel and achieve.
And I guess that's where you're actually then reconfirming with your client that that's, in their words, what you believe was their words and understanding is actually what you're setting them up for, so that it is clear. Because you just given a classic example where our perhaps interpretation of something isn't quite what our clients would be.
Yeah. Now, if, for example, a client needs to build up to something, and it is quite clearly they're not going to be the perfect person straight away in a conference, and they've never talked at a conference, let's say that. So the expectation, again, coming back to realistic expectation, might sound something like, and now that you've started this wonderful journey, you just get better and better at it from here, which I think is a fair and nice and reasonable concept to hold on to, because I think it would be very unfair to set them up expecting they're going to be this incredible auditor, or, that come out with all the words and all the right pace and everything else, but with having zero experience.
So I guess this would be really good for using for people not only with anxiety, but with phobias and trying to break habits as well, or form
Across
habits.
the board, yeah, anything really that someone is presenting for help. So yeah, it might be quitting smoking or weight loss or anything like that. We might have, like, let's say weight loss. We might have the client wants to not snack in between, or they want to do portion control, or they want to stop before they've eaten too much. So they want to slow down and chew their food. So all of those things can be a wonderful way of putting together a layered series of post-hypnotic suggestions. So we're reinforcing a behavior that's going to happen when that time occurs. So when that choice occurs to eat, then we're going to reinforce a specific type of behavior along with the emotion. So those are really important principles, I guess, to have in there as post-hypnotic suggestions. You've got to have the emotional, what's in it for me? We've got to have that direct behavioral shift. And we've got to make sure it's the positive that we're reinforcing, the positive behavior.
Yeah. You touched on anchors when we first started, and I was just going to ask you, what are anchors in the context of hypnosis, and how do you enhance the effectiveness of post-hypnotic suggestion?
So you could utilize an anchor physically. So you might get someone to place their thumb and forefinger together, and that could be an anchor. And in the actual session itself, you could reinforce that idea and activate the anchor at the peak of the emotion, and then disconnect it. And then every time they dress rehearse it, they are to connect it back up again and then disconnect it. So when they are in that situation in the future and they go and activate that physical anchor, they're able to easily then move into that state of mind or that state of belief and behavior instantly. So it's like a little switch.
And you can use many things, not just the fingers, can you? You can I've used it for somebody that always wears a particular necklace, and they touch their necklace. And for example, I had somebody particularly that was really concerned about germs and that during COVID and the washing the hands. They actually used when they were washing their hands as the anchor to help reinforce that state of calm and desensitize that stress.
Yeah, and as you unpack the client, you work out what they need, and also they can be in charge when you get to that part of the hypnotic journey of what anchor they would like to use. And you might give a few examples of what an anchor is during hypnosis, and then they have the ability to choose what anchor feels right for them. Now, an anchor could also be a non-physical anchor. It could be a color. So they think about a color, or it could be a word. That could be an activation. So every time you say the color sun, you say the word sun in your mind, and you think about the color yellow, it makes you feel whatever that is that the client wants to reinforce.
And I guess that's again where we come back to listening to our client when we're actually doing the pre-talk and finding out these little wonderful nuggets that you can actually use to help them through that hypnosis session.
Yeah,
And reinforce positive change.
for sure. No, I think it's essential as a hypnotherapist to really get comfortable utilizing post-hypnotic suggestion in every session. I don't think there's not a session that I would do without utilizing the post-hypnotic suggestion.
And here's a different question, which I don't think we've ever really sort of touched on, or not very often. So would there be any ethical considerations that you would keep in mind when using post-hypnotic suggestions?
Well, in general, I think you need to ask yourself, is it in the client's best interests? And are you really reinforcing something that is a healthy behavior? Also, if there is trauma involved, and they're in a not so great situation, we may need to look at that in the way of addressing the real causation of whatever is going on for them, rather than sidestepping dealing with that issue and trying to just force a positive outcome, but nothing actually is really changing in their environment. So there are some things when you're dealing with clients that come with different situations and different belief systems. And also you don't want to go against their core beliefs either. I think you need to be a bit careful about that. The ethical considerations too of touch. So sometimes you might see a stage hypnotist tapping someone on the shoulder, or utilizing the anchor somewhere in their body. Now, in a therapy session, we tend not to do a lot of touching with our client. So we also need to think about that side of things, about keeping our space and keeping their space. Yeah, what did you have in mind with that question, Teresa?
I think, as you say, that we've always like practice safe practice, always get your consent, make sure that your client is aware of what's going to happen in that session, so they've got no sudden sort of concerns or worries. And like you were mentioning, really, with the touch and that sort of thing, if you do feel there is a need to touch your client, then just get their permission before that actually happens, so that you're sure, because there's often a way around something without actually having to touch, because a lot of people do feel uncomfortable being touched by somebody else. Yes.
Yeah, we have different inductions, like the hand drop induction and things, where we might pick up their wrist and drop it down. I was taught always to say, in a moment, I'm going to pick up your wrist. Is that okay? And then you go and explain what's going to happen next, and go through that movement. So they have a chance to say no. It is startling if you suddenly touch a client. So let's say they have an ab reaction, like they get really upset and things aren't going well. The last thing you want to do is give them a hug or touch them or connect to them physically. You keep your space. That is not there for you to come into their zone. Otherwise, you might accidentally create an anchor which isn't resourceful through that touch.
Well, like you were saying about the touch of wrist, we don't necessarily know that person's background or history. They could have been restrained by their wrist, so that could, have a negative impact on that person and reinforce a negative reaction as being a trigger. So yeah, it's not to alarm anybody, but always good to be think about best practice and safety for yourself and your client when you're working with them.
For sure. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think practice unpacking the client, working out what the client wants, working out those three things, coming back to the principles. What is the desired new behavior? What is the emotion that they want to experience as they do that new behavior? And what is the belief that they want to really reinforce that's going to anchor that behavior? And also the post-hypnotic anchor, what are you going to utilize? Are you going to use many things? Like it could be a sound, it could be a time of day, it could be an object, it could be a sensation on the body. So work out, how you're going to work with a client. It's okay to be generic with your anchors. You don't always have to ask all the time what the client wants as an anchor. You can be more dominant as a hypnotherapist. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as it's not, let's say I get a client who's been to another hypnotherapist and they've used anchors and they've had post-hypnotic suggestions connected to those anchors. I will reutilize those anchors if they are in line with the similar emotions that the client wants to reinforce. However, if they're contradictory, so that's a whole new set of things that the client wants to reinforce, then I'm not going to muck up that old anchor.
Is there a way that you measure the success of post-hypnotic suggestion with your clients?
Actually, I think it's important to look at a scaling question in a hypnotic journey. So you might say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you to step up and do that public speaking? And then at the end of your hypnotic journey, now, when you activate the anchor, how do you feel now? So you can definitely, on a scale of 1 to 10, measure that, because it's very subjective, of course. So we use a SUDS method. So when we're kind of looking at that idea of measurement, it is important to check in. How are you feeling now versus when we began? Then, of course, if someone wants to feel like they've, oh, I had a wonderful one, the rats and mice phobia. Yeah. This was interesting because Teresa listened to one of my sessions, and it's going to be available for the students, actually. So you get to listen to that particular session, and it's a full session. So that is good for training and just showing you how I journey someone using hypnotic language patterns. However, she came back the following week, and on a scale of 1 to 10 at the beginning, she was a 12, like she was petrified. It was beyond 10 of rats and mice. And then during the session, she got right back down to, I think it was 5. Can you remember?
I think it was 4 or 5. It was quite low she got down to.
Yeah. And by the time that I saw her again, she was 1. It's like, no, and because she hadn't seen one in her house, she even went online and watched documentaries about rats and mice just to see what she would do. So that was cool. And this is where, when we're looking at post-hypnotic suggestion, this is where I'm priming her. So this an example is, she said, oh, I'm a bit scared to put my feet on the ground in the living room just in case one sort of is around and it might, touch me or something. So I feel more relaxed when I'm reclined. But I'm thinking, well, wouldn't that be cool if she didn't have to think about that at all and could be relaxed whether she was sitting upright or reclined? It shouldn't make any difference. So during the hypnotic journey, we reinforce that as a post-hypnotic suggestion, that even when you're sitting with your feet on the ground, you're able to stay cool and relaxed and deal with anything. And we also added in, and even when you're not at home, you will find creative and positive ways of dealing with rats and mice. So that was where we're moving beyond just having the trap there and having her normal environment to going wherever you are, in any situation, time or place, you're able to run a really good program of dealing with them in a calm and relaxed way. So that is definitely a big part of building on the client's experience from one session to the next. You're tweaking, you're fine-tuning. What else could we add to these post-hypnotic suggestions?
Yeah. I think you even used the color as well originally when you were starting
Yeah.
on that session.
Yeah.
So there's many ways that you can actually weave post-hypnotic suggestions into your session as well. You've just shown us many classic examples of that.
Yeah. And of course, not mixing up one anchor and putting too many things that aren't necessarily aligned to that anchor. Use a new anchor. You don't have to use the same one. So if someone wants to feel confident and strong, and they've been using a anchor that every time they do this with their fingers, it activates that feeling of confidence and strength, and then they come back to you and they want to work on something else, you don't necessarily use the same anchor. You go and use a different place and space. Don't mix up the anchors unless confidence and strong is part of the new regime.
Yep, because I guess you potentially could be undoing work that you have already set for that client because they've got an anchor, and you're then rechanging it, so it's not going to be effective, which is obviously going to change the outcome of what your client was expecting and potentially yourself.
So,
I'll ask you, do you need to be in trance?
Yeah. No, you don't need to be in trance to create a powerful trigger, because people do this in a negative way all the time. So they associate a situation or a place or a sound or a season to a very strong emotion that might have been disturbing for them. So every time they are in that situation, they suddenly feel really upset. Now, they weren't hypnotized in a formal way, but they had a strong emotional experience that then connected itself to different objects or times or spaces, that every time then that person has gone and re-entered into that, they've been re-triggered. So what we're doing as hypnotherapists is helping them to build positive triggers, and delete and disconnect the old trigger. So that's a big part. But you don't have to be in deep trance. You can do that just by light imagination, but the emotion needs to be right. So you've got to hit the right chord. You've got to get the person to imagine a strong positive emotion to really amp up that trigger. Yeah.
Okay, so that could be a common misconception, that you actually have to be in trance for post-hypnotic suggestions to work. Is there any other common misconceptions that you are aware of that people have about post-hypnotic suggestions that you'd like to address?
I think in general, going back to the hypnotherapist being in control of you, like we're not really. It's a collaborative journey. So a lot of times people think I'm going to take over or make them do something that they don't want to do, but actually during the therapy session, you're working with the client to work out what they want, what they need. So I think the misconception is we're going to go in there and we've got our script all set up and we're going to go from now on, you are da-da-da, without much input from them, which isn't how a session runs, not a really proper therapeutic session. I think you've got to tune in and really look into that client's world, that client's belief structure, that client's behavior. How are they reacting when? How would they like to react when? And all of that stuff needs to be done so the client is more likely to move with the process of reinforcing positive change.
I think that's a really important thing you've actually brought to people's attention, is that it's about the client and it's about the hypnotherapist not letting their ego get in the way of that session. It is about the client and what they want, not what we can do to help them or perceive that is the issue for them and how to fix it.
Yeah. Awesome. Was there any other questions that you had for me, Teresa, today?
No, it's just like looking forward to our next session, Meredith. It's becoming quite exciting adventure, our talk time and different aspects. Been nice to get some feedback from people and for them to actually drop a line to us saying if there's any topics or anything they'd like to have revealed to them from us. Yeah.
Cool. Well, if you are interested in training to become a clinical hypnotherapist, check out our school. You can visit www.nzach.ac.nz. I'm not sure if you can hear any of the sirens outside.
No.
Oh, that's amazing. It's just beeping and doing all sorts of things. So visit our school, have a look at our curriculum. It's online learning as well as actual classes that we have where there's a live person teaching you and going through the actual modules. So you're not alone. Okay, so you need to ask questions.
And remember, we're not just on YouTube, we're also on podcasts, Spotify, and other channels. Please like, subscribe, and hit that bell so that you get notifications of our next session.
Excellent. Thank you again, Teresa, for being with me this afternoon and asking me some great questions.
Thank you, Meredith. I turned the tables this week.
And
Put you on the spot.
And it's been a real pleasure actually doing this journey and unpacking the knowledge and sharing it with people out there. And our numbers of views are slowly building. And you might find also we've had a few background changes, just to say we're getting used to this podcasting thing, aren't we?
We are in the YouTube thing and what works and what doesn't. And, we're open to feedback. So please give us feedback, because of what we don't know, we can't change or can't improve on.
Yeah. So yeah, we're playing with background colors. So one of ours was a bit greeny, and yeah, we're working on our lighting. So we'll try and improve that bit by bit. So if anyone has any wonderful tips or anything, please drop us a line. But for now, thank you very much for tuning in, and have a wonderful time out there. Talk to you
Till
next week.
next time, take care.
Bye.